dates you were there.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Paul Fleischmann. I was born in April 28, 1932 in Budapest, Hungary. And I lived most of my life in Hungary. I was not taken away from Hungary. Um, in 1943, the Germans took over Hungary from the Hungarian government, and in March, to be exact, March of 1943, after that they made all the Jewish people move together in a ghetto. Like they named houses, not necessarily a ghetto, but they made up houses. They put Jewish star, big Jewish star on, like Star of David, on houses, and all the Jews had to live in those houses. Now this was before they even had a ghetto. They just, like areas where there were more Jews, so that's like we had a bigger apartment, so we had to take other people in, and more or less they forced us to, and this was in March of 43. And then they started to limit our access to go out pretty much to stores and everything else. So we only could go out like shopping for like 2 to 3 hours a day. Then they started to go, at that time, since the war started already, I think war started in 39, and everything was on tickets, or I don't know how else to say that. They had everything on ration. So they marked the ration tickets we had that it was a Jewish ticket, And most of the time what they done is, like if you went to the grocery store or something to get something, most of the time by the time we could go there, half of the time they didn't have anything. Or with our tickets, you couldn't get the same thing as the Christian tickets you could get, Even so, like I said, they had ration of meat and so on and so forth, but, ours were not as good as theirs. That's where they're. And see, we had it comparatively like a president over here. We had a leader by the name of Horthy. I don't know if either one of you ever heard of him. He ran the country before the Germans took over. Now, he was not a big fan of Jews in the first place, but he was better than the people who took over from him, because, and like after that, see, my father had a store, and in 1944, they took away my father's store. They had just closed it. They put a sticker on there that they closed it, and they didn't give it to somebody else. They just put a sticker on there, and they closed it. And they put, nobody can get into the store. That it's a Jewish store, and it's on their it was on there in Hungarian and in German, all the sticker that nobody supposed to go in there or anything. I mean, it was closed anyhow. And in 1944, Horthy and his son had discussions with some American government people to give up the country to United States, and that United States should come over there and take over. And that was a dream. He was crazy, because United States armies were still in, someplace way in the other side of the country. There's no way that they could come there. If he would have dealt with the Russians that time, the Russians were closer, but he didn't want to deal. Matter of fact, his son got killed by the Germans for it, and he was put in jail. And then there is another reason I even mentioned it. After they dethroned him and they put a guy in there, a fellow by the name of Saloshi, who was a former butcher, run a government, a person who was a former butcher and also a mentally sick person who was in and out of mental institutions. He took over the government, and his favorite, he put out like stickers or laws. His favorite saying was that who doesn't do what he wants is going to be cut up. You know, being a butcher, you understand that was his attitude about people, especially Jews. Anyhow, so after that, he took over in, I think, of October of 1944 or something, September, October, when he took over the government. At that time, see, I have to go back a little bit. See, so happened in Hungary, the small cities, when the Germans took over the small cities, you know, like part of what is now, after that become Czechoslovakia, and, you know, like Karpatsky, Ukrainsky, and all that, you know, which is used to be at one time Hungary. The smaller cities, all the Jews were already sent to concentration camps. They ended up in Auschwitz and so on. And strangely enough, I can't answer you. I don't really know the answer. The people in Budapest were not deported, at least not when other people started to get deported. And you know, my father had like something like 14 sisters and brothers, and they lived in other cities, and then we wanted them to come to Budapest because they looked like at least Budapest was safe for time being. And they just, you know, a lot of our, I hate to put it this way, but it seems like you asked her the question before, a lot of our Jews, in general speaking, didn't want to believe that things like that can happen. You know, when they were talking about it, and they started to have the warning signs even then. Oh, it can happen to us. It's, you know, oh, we've been good citizens. We've been having stores. We had this, we had that. You know, we had factories, so on. Oh, they wouldn't do to us. This is, you know, I had a dear brother. He was killed in a concentration camp, and he had a hobby to write poems. And in in the early 40s, when he heard about what happened in Germany, he wrote an article, you know, and said that it's going to happen here too. And my father's friends, who, you know, Jewish friends and all that, said, "Oh, you're a dreamer. You know, all poets and all that, you know, they have a habit of dreaming things. Nothing like that ever going to happen here." Well, you know, he was right and the others were wrong, but that's no here nor there. But see, when you ask that question about, we wanted to, and I hate to talk against relations, but my father had a sister in Montevideo in Uruguay, you know, in South America. And when my brother was about 16 years old, and my oldest brother, the one who got killed, they wanted him to leave and go to Uruguay. And seems like that they wrote that time that he would have to, number one, change his religion, number one, because Uruguay already that time, I don't know how the situation is now in Montevideo and all that, they will not give any permission for Jews to come in there.
You know, the first time you were personally affected, you said was March of 1943.
Yes, sir.
Where they had put the stars on the
Yes,
houses,
yes.
and you were more or less ghettoized into your own certain homes.
Right.
And past that, it started getting worse and
Worse
worse
and worse,
in terms of food rations.
Then, right.
And what more or less progressed in that way for you personally in your experience?
Well, number one, like the food ration, that was number one. After that, after this guy by the name of Saloshi took over, then my father, my mother, and my two brothers were taken away they were transported to concentration camps.
Why not you?
This is a strange thing. I mean, I still don't understand it up to today what really happened. I don't know the answer because what they done, they said that people from age, something like age, I think 16, I'm not 100%. From age 16 to 60, they took everybody.
So you were how old?
I was at that time, I was born in 32, this was in 43, I was about 10 or 11, And my luck was also, after that, after the new regime took over, I found a letter, and how strange things in life happen. I found a letter from my mom, had some friend or relative, I'm not sure, lived in Sweden. And I heard from some other people, 11-year-old kids, so you have to realize that the Swedish government, I'm sure you heard of Mr. Wallenberg, who I personally met.
Wow, Wallenberg.
Yeah, remember you. Matter of fact, I understand they're going to have a special date this coming week for Wallenberg. I went to, to the. Somebody suggested that after I found that letter, some of the people I live with, older people, suggested that I should go and see Mr. Wallenberg, who had a headquarters in Budapest, And I went over there and I met the man, and it was very.
Wallenberg?
Oh yeah, I met him.
11 years old?
Yeah, I met him more than once, couple times. Yeah. Yeah,
We'll get this on.
yeah, that's me.
This is you and your parents?
Yeah, that's me and my father and my mother.
Can you stick this up?
Yeah, give it to him to hold up.
Here,
A
can
little bit higher. Right.
got it? Can I take it out?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I did that. Anyhow, so what he done, which is, I don't know if that's public knowledge, what he done, he rented a few homes in a real good neighborhood in Hungary. That was the most expensive apartment buildings. To compare it, I don't know, maybe here like Bexley House or something like that, okay? And he rented some of this, and he put up the Swedish flag on these apartment buildings, and he transported some young kids like myself and some older people, so I don't exactly know the number, how many people into it, and he, through his government, issued us what we call a protection pass or a Schutzpass, which I had, but I don't any longer. I don't know what happened to it. I lost it someplace. I should have kept it. Anyhow, and the Germans, and I don't know, like it's something it never been proven to me. The German government honored him by not touching anybody who was in those.
Was he Swiss?
Swiss, yeah. But he is really, way I understand, he was somehow related to or to the Habsburgs or something like that. He had blue blood, you know what I mean by blue blood. He's really he was not Jewish, as you know that.
But the Germans honored him.
Well, seemed like that the German had with the Swiss government some kind of dealing with. I think the Swiss government supplied the Germans with war machinery, like timers. You know, Swiss were always famous for their watches and everything. They still are. And I think they supplied the German government with stuff.
Well, you mentioned before that your mother, father, and your two other brothers.
Yeah,
was it?
two brothers.
Were all taken away. The Germans came into your. The Germans came into your house one day and took them away, and you were there and they left you.
No, that's not how they.
What type of situation was it?
Well, they didn't. They actually, what they done is, first of all, when Saloshi took over, that the next day, the Germans came into our house, and they took everybody out of the house, and we were transported. That's a funny way to put it. We walked to the first Jewish synagogue, which is, we stayed in a synagogue by Nimaromba temple. Hundreds and hundreds of people, and let's face it, synagogues are not made for hundreds and hundreds of people to be there 24 hours a day, you know, with naturally, well, the more modern synagogues over here have more than one restroom, right? There was only one restroom for hundreds and hundreds, and we were just, all we could do is sit in the benches, you know, like the pews. And so we were there something like 3 days. Then they decided to send us back home again. But they said, we better close the windows, put the shades down. They don't want anybody to go to the window, because if they see anybody by the window, get shot immediately. Like I told you, this guy loved to kill people. He had the habit of it, I guess. Anyhow, and then about 2 days after that, they put out a sign downstairs in that house that everybody, all men and women at that age group, what I was saying, about 16 to 60, have to report to a soccer field. You know, Hungary is big on soccer ball, if you know what I mean, on a soccer field, and that they're going to go to work. You know, they always had that crazy, I don't know what their idea was about that, constantly saying that people were going to work, you know. I think they were trying to, they tried to cover their criminal attitude with that word, I think, work. And that's pretty much the last time I seen my father and my brother, our older brother. And I never found out where they went.
So you were left by yourself. They went.
Yeah.
And you were left in your
Apartment.
In your apartment. You're 11 years old. You're left by your apartment.
Yeah. No, not by myself. Like I said, they left older people over 60 and kids my age.
So who cared for you?
Really, nobody.
You just wandered?
Nobody. Actually, nobody. Starving. If you want to know the truth, starving.
So then you went to Wallenberg at this point?
Yeah, when we went to Wallenberg, and Wallenberg, like I said, he made these houses. The Swiss government, which we had Swiss flag on the Swedish government, and also the Vatican, which is naturally the Pope. These three governments made safe houses, if you want to put, I think that's about the best word for them. And the German government refused to touch these houses for a while anyhow. This was for something like from October to December. And
what were the houses like?
oh, they're beautiful apartments, beautiful. I mean,
They took care of you there?
no. We lived there, okay?
Did they feed you?
Some of the Red Cross International Red Cross. Somehow they brought in like once a day food, great big kettles like bean soups, and I don't want to go into that now because the person who was like the leader of the house, he and his family got the beans and we got the water. You know, bean soup, I mean, I'm sure you know how to cook, so I'm not going to. You're supposed to stir it up, right? If you want to, right? So what they done is give us the water, and because we were just people he didn't know, okay? And his family got the beans, so a lot of times. And anyhow, so, and we got a piece of cornbread each day. That was the only bread we got. And I tell you, what I done, at 10, 11 years old, the person sometimes feels that he is stupid. I mean, today I probably wouldn't try it. I went and there was a lot of older people, and we couldn't go out for shopping at all already that time, period. And some of the older people needed medicine, okay? And there was no way to get medicine to them. They would have died from without, like some of them diabetes and so on and so forth. Now, I certainly look Jewish, and all my life I did, as at picture shows too. What I done, I was starving, okay? And starvation is very, it's a very painful thing, believe it or not. If you don't eat for days, or you eat that watered up soup and a piece of cornbread, you get hungry. So what I done is, first of all, I got kind of friend with a janitor who was a Christian, okay? And he gave me the newspapers. We got in newspapers. I don't know how but he somehow got the newspaper. And I went around selling the newspaper, so I made a few cents with that. Then, because my parents, since they took them away, there was just no monies or anything there to have, And plus, even if we would, I mean, the Germans pretty much took away all our furniture and everything, either way, so I made some money of that. And all of a sudden, I don't know, somebody suggested to me that why don't I try to go out, when I wasn't supposed to, let's put it that way, and get the medicine for these people. And what I did, you saw that star on me that I was supposed to wear. I took that star off, which was against the law, naturally, And I went to the drugstore, stand in line in the drugstore with the prescription of these people, And the drug, and because, was down to the wrong hours, they still had something like a couple hours where we could go, but, there was not enough. And I tell you, I never forget one day, one of my school friends, I went with Christian and Jewish kids in school in Hungary before. One of my school friends walks over to me in a Hungarian Nazi uniform. They had the armband, with not the swastika, but they had a cross. I don't know if you've ever seen those things. They looked a little different than the actual Hakenkreuz. It was the Hungarian. They had like arrows on their armband. And he walks over to me and he says, "What the heck are you doing here?" He says, "I know who you are." He says, "You're Jewish, Hungarian, And he says, "I could kill you right here and now. So, go ahead, So he took me in, and he pulled me out of the line, and he took me into the first, building, and he says, He says, you know, I could shoot and kill you right here, or I could take you in and then you would get killed. I said, well, I said, I had to do it. I was starving, you know. Starvation hurts. I said, you know, if you want to kill me, go ahead. Who cares, you know. So he says, no. He says, I wouldn't do that. He says, after all, we used to be friends. And he says, I won't do it. He says, but he says, I don't want to see you out. And he says, I'm going to watch for you. He says, the next time I see you on the street, he says, I'm not going to do it. He says, but I'm going to tell the other people who you are and all that. So that's the last time I went out, because, you know, I'm not a hero either. So that's stopped. But I tell you one thing, the people who actually lived these apartments before were very, very wealthy people. And they had, you know, years ago, ladies used to can goods and stuff like that. You know, nobody does that anymore. At least very few people I know who can anymore, you know, fresh fruits and all that. And they had a lot of that stuff still there, you know, in their apartments. So they felt sorry for us kids, and, you know, they sometimes give us something to eat. So we had some of that. And then starting in just about Hanukkah of 1943, 1944 rather, 1944 is when they started to take people from these houses, from the Wallenberg houses. I don't know, they had some kind of misunderstanding, so they gave up on, they didn't have, they wanted to stop this protection bid. And they started to started to take down people from each house in the middle of the night down to the Danube, and they were shooting people into the Danube. And we were in that, they took them by house, okay?
Was Wallenberg aware of what was going on?
He was, but I don't think he was, he couldn't really do much anymore. Because the Germans already knew that they had their, you know, the Russians were just around the corner, you know. They knew that they are going to lose the war. I mean, a lot of the Germans were not that dumb that they didn't know what's going on.
Then why did they feel compelled to do the killings?
Well, a way I understand is, you know, their way of believing was that the only answer is to the world, their German problem is to kill all Jews. I mean, that's what their, you know, that was Adolf Hitler's. If you read Mein Kampf, I don't know if either one of you read it. I wouldn't read it, but what I heard excerpts of it, that was his opinion on it. That, you know, there was Jews were their problem. I don't know why, but that was his opinion. So either way. So anyhow, so they scheduled our house to be taken down to the, and we had the windows open because we didn't have air conditioning, or anything like that, or heat. And we heard every night people screaming, you know, because these houses were very close to the Danube, down by the lake, by the river. And we heard people screaming at night, and we would be the next one, then like a couple days later. And what happened, I'll be very honest, I don't know, because I never been told. They were supposed to come something like middle of the night to they didn't tell us what they're gonna do. They just told us that middle of the night we're gonna be transported someplace else. That was the, you know. They never told you the truth. They didn't believe in telling the truth. I mean, you know, we were supposed to be transported in the middle of the night someplace else. That the Schutzpass, which is the protection, is over. There's no more protection. Wallenberg's protection is over. They don't honor it no more, and we might as well take the papers and tear it up, because they're just not going to honor it no more, and we all going to be transported someplace else, middle of the night. And we knew, I mean, things always somehow, I don't know, Jewish newspaper, somehow things getting back to people. I don't know how, even if the newspapers naturally didn't write anything about it because there was no. But see, somehow through strange channels you get things back, And we knew that if they taking us in the middle of the night, what it means is that we're next to be killed, by the Danube. I don't know exactly how many people got killed down there, but quite a few. They machine gun them down at the Danube. Matter of fact, a few years ago, here in Columbus, they played in a Jewish center a movie. Do you remember what the name of the movie was? I think Alice or somebody got us that they had.
Yeah, you didn't like it, you didn't want to see it.
And I was ready to walk out because they were in our Jewish center. They
Yeah,
about the Hungarian
rising.
no, it was not about the uprising. That Nazi.
Had you felt that the fellow citizenship of the Hungarians was sensitive or felt for your situation? Or
The Christians, you mean? Some yes, some no.
Say friends of your parents that those citizens saw that your parents left and you were there. Had they come to see about you or
They couldn't. They couldn't. They wouldn't.
So
They wouldn't want to. Let's face it. They were just as much of a danger. In general. I'm not trying to be prejudiced about it because I'm not. They would have been just as danger to talk to Jewish people, as anything. There was the Germans and especially the Hungarian.
Getting back to the night at the Wallenberg house, what happened?
Well, this is a question I don't know the answer.
Well,
They never showed up.
so then what happened to you?
So then what happened is, so that we were waiting and shaking like a so-called Lilith, worried about it. The women were crying and, especially older people were crying, and we knew what's supposed to happen and all that. They didn't show up. Nobody knows why. I can't answer you because I don't know. Then about in the morning, early in the morning, next day, a Hungarian policeman, came into the house, and he says, "Well, your transportation been changed, and you're not going to be transported, and we're going to let you know when you're going to be transported." So, good, great. To bring you up to date, in December 24th, 1944, the Russian army put a ring around Budapest. In other words, a complete ring, meaning that the Germans were not able to get out of Budapest. See, Budapest is built, there's two cities really. It's Buda and Pest. Now, I lived in Pest. Buda was more or less there's very few Jews lived in Buda at all, as far as I know. There was more the Capitol buildings and there was so on and so forth. And they had like 5 bridges go across the Danube. And the 5 bridges, when the Germans realized that the Russians were on their neck, they blew up they run across, and they blew up all the bridges.
The Germans blew up.
The Germans did.
So that the Russians couldn't enter the city.
Right, they couldn't go to the other side of the city, okay? So anyhow, starting, and we were just saying that time that, it was around Christmas time, and when they started, they bombarded the city, just with cannons, not with
The Germans or
the Russians. The Russians started
they
to.
were wanting to flush the Germans.
Yeah, right. So anyhow, then what happened in January, in December, yet all of a sudden the same group of people, came to that place where we stayed and said, "You're going to be transported." This time they told us that you're going to be transported into a ghetto. There was actually a ghetto in Budapest where all the people who were not under Wallenberg's protection lived. Well, let's put it that way, lived, okay? Were, older people and young kids and so on and so forth who were not taken away. And so we were transported from that Wallenberg home by the Nazis, or Hungarian Nazis, and the German army people to the ghetto, which was, a section where I was really born, back to my good old apartment, okay? An old home per se.
You got your old apartment back?
Well, like I said, it was in the ghetto, and I didn't get my apartment back because there was about 30 people living in that apartment, people sleeping on the floor and so on and so forth, and our furniture, which was left, the people, well, you couldn't blame the people. I mean, I'm talking about Jewish people, they burned up our furniture for having heat. What could you do? I mean, you have to survive somehow, So, I mean, but it so happened, I figured the minute they pushed us into the ghetto, they said, here, you go and find yourself a place. There was completely, they had fences around the ghetto, I don't know how many streets total, And that's where I was after from end of December till January the 18th, 1945, when the Russian army took over Budapest.
Were you happy that the Russians
Oh,
took over?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was free, let's face it. The Russians came in, and I'm not, and they started to, per se, again, over at the ghetto, we had the same wonderful food like from the Red Cross, and at least when the Russians took over, at least we got food. Not, maybe not that good, but food is food, something you eat, They had their bread and their, so that's in general, the whole story.
Well, what happened after the Russians liberated you? How old were you? And
Well, I was in 45, I was about 13 years old, right? I wasn't quite, and so after that, what happened is I stayed there, and all of a sudden, some people started to come back from the concentration camps to, because when the war was over, the people started to come back, and my brother, the one is in California, he came back. He was the first one who, he came back.
Your brother came back?
Yeah, he came back. He was a mess, but anyhow, he came back, and we started to look for if anybody else is alive, and we couldn't find anybody. So through the Red Cross and some other organizations, I think mostly Red Cross, we found out that my mom, this was in 45, that my mom was in a hospital in Austria. She was in concentration camp, and that I don't know how the Red Cross done a terrific job. It is it's just out of this world. Try to get people together, families together, they just done a terrific job. It's no ifs. But she was in a very, very bad condition, they said. And she was close to death, they said. And so then my brother and I joined the Zionist organizations in Budapest, which it started out. And we decided that the way the Hungarians were toward us, they should have, shouldn't have let the Germans do everything, but I mean, maybe they were scared, I don't know. I didn't want to stay in Hungary, so we decided we're going to go to Israel.
So when you found out your mother was in Austria,
Yeah.
you first went.
Well, that's what I'm coming to, that in right now. Anyhow, so we joined the Zionist organizations, and the Zionist organizations told us that if we want to leave Hungary, they could get us false papers to get out of Hungary through the border, in which they did. And that's how I got out of Hungary. I was more or less smuggled out of Hungary by the Haganah, who was very strong, believe it or not, which is an Israel army, really. Zionist organizations and all that. They smuggled us out of Hungary at night on trains, not cow trains, but regular trains, to Vienna. And I found out, the Red Cross told us that my mom was in a hospital near Vienna, where we finally found my mom. Man, she was a mess. So she was probably 50 pounds. And my mom, she should rest in peace, she was a big lady. As you can see on the picture, she was not she was pretty heavy-set lady at one time,
Mm-hmm.
And she had heart condition, she had typhoid fever and all that. I mean, she was just ready to go. I mean, she was just in very bad shape. And so we finally, through the American UNRWA and all that, and the Jewish joint organizations helped her get her back to health. And we ended up in a displaced person camp, namely in Germany, in the name of Aschau, which is in Germany. Matter of fact, it's in Bavaria. Okay, and we started to search for more and more, and to see if we can find my brother and anybody else of the relations, and which they weren't successful. We didn't find my father or my brother must have been killed, because otherwise we would have found him somehow. Anyhow, and then we stayed there in Germany in the displaced person camps, which were run by the UNRWA. I don't know if you ever heard of those camps. Did you? And then we had a chance, my brother and I had a chance to go to Israel on one of these illegal, I am sure you heard of that. They had that illegal way to get like the Exodus, similar ships, that you would have to go to France, and then they boarded ships in France, and then they would try to go to Israel, outside of Israel, and then run, jump ship, and what I never done it, so I'm just saying what I read or what I heard, get into Israel. Well, what happened to that is we could have went to, but my mom, through her had a heart condition, the Zionists refused to take her. We all had to go through physicals, and they said my mom wasn't in a health, and so we had a choice at that time just to leave my mom again. No way. I wouldn't leave her, Anyhow, so we had to wait until we figured, and they said maybe if Israel was going to become a state, which happened, thank God for that. And then it happened that 1948, Truman passed that law with the displaced persons. As a Hungarian, I could never come to the United States because I didn't have no relatives But in 1948, they came on that law that displaced persons could come to the United States without quota. I don't know if either one of you heard of that. Did you ever heard of that? Anyhow, 120,000 displaced persons could come to the United States without quota, except somebody from the United States would have to guarantee or sponsor a job, and we were sponsored. Strangely enough, now it's funny now, but we were sponsored by some organization, naturally Jewish organization, in Des Moines, Iowa. Des Moines is pretty much in the news now. That's why I'm even mentioning it. And we were transported to United States by, we came with Army ships. The light is too much, huh? Anyhow, we were transported by Army ships. They were leasing Army ships, like Army transport ships. And like I remember, it was a General Muir. I don't even know today who the heck is General Muir is, but it must have been somebody. I would have to check up on our history. He must have been some kind of a hero that the ship was named after him. I don't know. We had 1,300 people in that ship. We had to work. Well, like myself, I had to work in the kitchen because we didn't have no money to pay for it. Let's face it, the Highest and all the Jewish organization paid for us for the trip. But then we arrived to Boston. There was a strike in New York at that time. Some kind of loader, the people who unload the ships, what they call it, you know what I mean. They were on strike, so we ended up in Boston Harbor. And from Boston, we took the train we got tickets in Boston. Again, Jewish ladies, probably Hadassah and all the rest of the organizations were waiting for us over there. And they give us tickets to go to Iowa, where we had to go by law, because that's where the sponsors were. And I went to high school in Iowa,
Did you? Where did you find to live? Where did you live?
Well, the Jewish organization put us up in apartments. I mean, there's a lot of, a lot of Jewish organizations done a lot of good jobs. I mean, there's no question in my mind.
I think you left something.
What did I leave on?
You were at the Rothschild Hospital.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I was sick. And they find out.
In the States you were sick?
No. In Germany, they came and they found out that they give me that, you have children, so you know what I'm talking about. They give me that tuberculin test. And they found out that I have tuberculosis. I had a hole in my lung. I had a type of the thing, but even today it kills, like a cancer of the lung. That's what they call it now. Years ago they called it tuberculosis. And I ended up they put me in a hospital, and I was in a hospital for something like 4 or 5 months they had to give me calcium shots and so on and so forth. And luckily, knocking on wood, it healed.
Getting back to Iowa.
Yeah.
You went to high school. Did your mother have to work?
Yes.
And your brother?
Same way. He had to work too.
Okay. How did you two meet?
Oh, well,
How did you
now wait a minute. Okay, just to make it short, I know. What happened is my brother learned in Germany in an art school. He's a little older than I am. He's a couple of years older than I am, okay? He learned in an art school how to fix typewriters and also how to use a turret lathe. You know what a turret lathe is? I'm not a mechanic, so don't ask me. And so when we came to Iowa, they got him a job. again, the Jewish welfare or the vocational service got him a job. And so, like my mom used to work in the department store sewing the drapes in the alteration department. My mother knew how to sew. I mean, most, and so they give her a job in a sewing room over there. And believe it or not, we neither one, nor myself, nor my mom, nor my brother, none of us knew how to speak English, a word, not a word. And Iowa is one thing you have to know about it. Had very few Jewish people at that time, number one. Number two, most of the Jewish people there couldn't even speak. There was probably one Hungarian family in the whole city, I mean Jewish Hungarian, who we could talk to, and you were forced. I mean, let's face it, actually forced. I started to go to high school, and I was, at that time, that was in 1950. I was about 18 years old, right? Let's face it, us guys, forgive me, some of these girls were laughing or smiling at us or something like that, and we didn't understand. I didn't understand what the heck they're talking about, so I felt maybe that they're talking about me, so you feel bad. So I personally was forced to start learning English in a hurry, because if I wanted to talk to the people, being in high school, I was probably the only Jewish kid in the whole high school that time, or if there was a few, but the kids were American born too. I mean, most of the Jewish kids, they didn't speak any other language, but surely not Hungarian. Well, I understand. I speak Hungarian. I mean, I don't speak Hungarian anymore, believe it or not. I just forgot, believe it or not. It's not, no, I just don't. But I understand German fluently because of my,
Yeah, but you can answer.
I can't answer, but I can understand German fluently, and I understand naturally Jewish, too, but I can't speak it, but I understand it. And so I had nobody to talk to, so I had to learn in a hurry how to speak English. So the long story short, what about Cleveland? My brother got a job through the Jewish Vocational Service, and he was a daredevil. He went, and after 3 months, he asked for a raise, right? So they fired him. It's Iowa for you, I don't know if that's Iowa or that years ago that's how it was in other cities too. So the Jewish Vocational Service chewed him out grandly that you just came to this country, be happy you're here, and so on. And all these women jumped all over him. You should be happy and you should be grateful and so on and so forth. And we heard that about every other day. You shouldn't have asked for a raise. You should have asked us if you should, and you wouldn't have. So finally, he got a job at a tractor factory. John Deere, John Deere. He got a job at John Deere to work on the machinery there, okay? And with our luck, maybe not. Anyhow, they went on a strike. But what are we going to live on, I mean, we didn't get nothing from our Jewish organizations. We didn't want any because they pretty much forced us to we should get a job. Matter of fact, in the evening, after school, I had a job at Loot Magazine. I don't know if either one of you remember Loot Magazine. I was in Iowa in there. What I used to do is mail out all this junk mail you get. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Offers and all the garbage mail. I don't know how else to put it. I worked there for about 9 months or sometime. Anyhow, so my brother didn't have a job. So what happened is we found out all of a sudden that I have an uncle, he's gone, he should rest in peace already, still lived in Hungary. And then he had a daughter, which we also didn't know that they were alive at all. You know, I mean, really, it's a fact. Lived in Cleveland. And I mean, so my cousin, she still lives in Cleveland, matter of fact, called us in Iowa. And my mom fainted, and it's terrible, you know. One found out that we all thought that she was dead, okay? So either way, and my brother came on the phone and told her that he doesn't have a job. And then in Iowa, you know, Iowa, and especially Des Moines, most of the places are insurance. There's not much factory there at all. I mean, I don't know now. I'm away from there since 1950. I really don't know, you know. So my cousin told him that, hey, you got the knowledge, come to Cleveland. I'm sure we can get you a job here. So that's how he ended up in Cleveland, okay? And he went by himself first, and he got himself a job, a pretty good job, and then he started to write and call us. Oh, well, you got to come here. I was happy there. I was going to school. I was learning the language. I was dating, to be honest with you, you know. Sometimes not necessarily Jewish girls, but that's no, you know, there to, you know. But that's, you know, I went out with chicks, which were, some people didn't, they jumped all over me for that because they said, you were in a concentration camp and all, I mean, in Germany, and you went through all that, and then you go out with the shits. I mean, you know, what? With non-Jewish girl, I mean, hey, they were Americans, not Germans, right? So what difference? Anyhow, so I didn't want to leave, but my brother drove us crazy. That he wants to be together and all that. So finally, my mom taught me to go to Cleveland. Okay, we came to Cleveland. My brother already had an apartment for us, and we lived in one of the worst neighborhoods that Cleveland got. I don't know if either one of you remember that uprising or that deal that, I don't know if you call it uprising or not, how many years? It's quite a few years ago when the blacks burned down a section of Cleveland. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Was it bad then?
Yeah. We lived in that neighborhood, around half. You know Cleveland at all? Either one of you know Cleveland?
What
Yeah.
was the name of the section?
It's half area, half Wade Park. It's a bad neighborhood. Well, I continued my high school there, and my high school is no longer either. There was John Hay High. And that's not there. I'm a graduate of John Hay High, which they used to call them the bookkeepers, strangely enough. But anyhow, that school is not there no more. It's been boarded up for years.
And then you met your wife shortly.
We met on a blind date, believe it or not. What happened? My mom was involved went to Jewish clubs and all that, you know, and she met some people and some jewelers there. These people, when they're both, I think, gone. Anyhow.
I know the jeweler before.
Yeah, you knew them. And anyhow, they were jewelers, and they had a son, and they wanted to fix hand off with their son, okay? They were from Germany also. They were survivors. Anyhow, and for some reason, my dear wife here didn't like him. He was too short, he was this, I don't know. You know how life is. I don't have to tell you that, you know, each one of us have their own taste, right? And they said, well, I'll tell you, they told my mom, he says, you know, as much as we would have liked her to be with our son, but they just don't get along. Just,
never went out with him.
well, they just have not, don't see eye to eye, so we give you the phone number. Why doesn't your son call her up? And the rest is history. Really. We went on a blind date. So, anything else?
I think you got it. I think you got it.
But I tell you, it was rough.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was very informative. Both of your experiences really out of the ordinary.